The little girl couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Her pink sneakers slapped against the hot asphalt as she ran toward the line of motorcycles parked outside the roadside diner, her face streaked with tears, her voice breaking with desperation. "Please!" she screamed, her small hands reaching out to the nearest biker. "Please save my mom. She's dying, please." The burly man with a gray beard turned, his leather vest creaking as he knelt down to her level. Behind him, a dozen other bikers, men and women with tattoos, bandanas, and road-worn faces, stopped mid-conversation, their laughter dying on their lips. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. This wasn't part of their Saturday ride. This wasn't what they'd expected when they'd pulled off. Highway 40 for lunch. But sometimes life doesn't ask if you're ready. Sometimes it just puts a desperate child in your path and waits to see what kind of person you really are. The man's name was Marcus, though everyone called him Bear. He'd been riding for 30 years, had seen his share of trouble, and had the scars to prove it. But nothing had prepared him for the raw terror in this little girl's eyes. "Slow down, sweetheart," he said gently, his rough hands steadying her trembling shoulders. "Tell me what's happening." "My mom," the girl gasped, trying to catch her breath between sobs. She collapsed. "She won't wake up. We don't have a phone. Our car broke down 2 miles back, and we've been walking, and she just fell, and I don't know what to do." Her words tumbled out in a frantic rush, each one more desperate than the last. Bear looked up at his riding companions. They'd all heard. Sarah, a nurse who rode a cherry-red Harley, was already moving toward them, her medical training kicking in before anyone else could react. "Show us where," Bear said to the little girl, his voice calm and commanding. "Right now. Can you ride with me?" The girl nodded frantically. Within seconds, Bear had her on the back of his bike, her small arms wrapped tight around his waist. Sarah jumped on behind her riding partner, Jake, and 3 other bikers fired up their engines without a word. They didn't need a discussion or a vote. They didn't need to know the details. A child needed help. A mother was in danger. That was enough. The convoy roared to life, following the little girl's pointing finger down the highway, and then onto a dusty service road that looked like it hadn't seen traffic in months. The girl, whose name was Emma, shouted directions over the engine noise, her voice still thick with tears. "There, by the old fence! That's our car!" They saw the rusted sedan first, its hood up, steam still rising from the engine. And then they saw her, a woman in her early 30s, lying motionless in the shade of a scraggly tree about 50 yards from the road. Emma was off the bike before Bear had fully stopped, running to her mother's side. Mom, wake up! I brought help!" Sarah was right behind her, dropping to her knees beside the unconscious woman. She checked for a pulse, felt the woman's forehead, noticed the pallor of her skin and the shallow breathing. "She's burning up," Sarah announced, her trained eyes taking in the situation quickly. "Heat exhaustion, maybe heat stroke. We need to get her temperature down and get her to a hospital now." Jake was already on his phone, calling 911, giving their location to the dispatcher. But they all knew the same thing. Out here, in the middle of nowhere, an ambulance could take 30 minutes or more. Time this woman might not have. Bear pulled off his leather vest and handed it to Sarah, who rolled it up and placed it under the woman's head. Another biker, a woman named Rita, produced a bottle of water from her saddlebag and began moistening the unconscious woman's lips while Sarah poured water on her neck and wrists, trying to cool her core temperature. Emma knelt beside her mother, holding her hand, whispering, "It's okay. Mom, they're here. They're helping. Please wake up. How long have you two been out here?" Sarah asked gently, still working. "Since this morning," Emma said, her voice small. "We were going to Grandma's house, but the car started making noises and then it just stopped. Mom said we'd walk to find help, but it was so hot, and there weren't any cars. And Mom kept saying she felt dizzy. And then she just fell down and wouldn't get up, and I didn't know what to do." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "I ran, and then I saw your bikes, and I thought maybe you could help us." Bear felt something crack inside his chest. This kid had probably been terrified of them at first. Big, scary bikers with their leather and tattoos. But desperation had pushed her past fear, and she'd taken a chance on strangers, who looked nothing like the heroes from her storybooks. "You did good, Emma," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You did real good. The woman on the ground stirred slightly, a soft moan escaping her lips. Sarah leaned close. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" "My name is Sarah. You're going to be okay." "We're getting you help." The woman's eyes fluttered open, confused and disoriented. "Emma?" she whispered. "I'm here, Mom." Emma squeezed her mother's hand tighter. "I found help." "They're nice. They're helping us." Jake came back from making the call. "Ambulance is 20 minutes out. They said keep her cool, keep her hydrated if she can swallow. They're coming as fast as they can." 20 minutes felt like an eternity. The bikers worked together like a well-oiled machine, each person finding a way to help. Someone produced an emergency blanket from their gear, and they rigged up a sunshade to keep the direct sunlight off mother and daughter. Rita sat with Emma, distracting her with gentle conversation, while the others took turns pouring water, monitoring the woman's condition, and watching the road for the ambulance. The woman, whose name was Jennifer, slowly regained consciousness, though she remained weak and disoriented. Sarah stayed by her side, talking to her in soothing tones, explaining what had happened, assuring her that Emma was safe, that help was coming. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears when she realized what her daughter had done, how this 7-year-old girl had been brave enough to run for help, to approach strangers to save her life. "Thank you," Jennifer whispered, her voice barely audible. "Thank you for stopping, for helping us. I thought—" She couldn't finish the sentence, but they all understood. She'd thought they might ignore her daughter, that they might be too busy, too intimidating, too uninterested to care about a desperate child's plea. Bear knelt down so she could see his face. "We're not the monsters people sometimes think we are," he said quietly. "We're just regular folks who happen to love riding. And regular folks help each other when trouble comes calling." When the ambulance finally arrived, the paramedics were surprised to find the patient stable, properly positioned, and already receiving competent first aid. Sarah briefed them quickly with professional efficiency, and they loaded Jennifer onto a stretcher with practiced care. Emma started to climb in after her mother, but Jennifer stopped her. "Wait," she said to the paramedics, then looked at her daughter. "Did you thank them? Did you thank these people who saved us?" Emma's eyes welled up again. But this time they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of gratitude. She threw her arms around Bear's neck, hugging him tight. "Thank you," she sobbed. "Thank you for saving my mom. Thank you for being heroes." One by one, she hugged each of the bikers who had stopped to help. And one by one, these tough, road-hardened riders felt their own eyes grow damp. They'd been called a lot of things over the years: troublemakers, rebels, outsiders. But heroes? That was new. Bear reached into his wallet and pulled out a card with his number on it. "You tell the hospital to call me if there are any bills your insurance doesn't cover," he told Jennifer. "And you call me when you're back on your feet. We'll make sure that car of yours gets towed and fixed up proper. You're not alone in this." The other bikers nodded in agreement. Someone pressed cash into Emma's hand for food and drinks at the hospital. Another wrote down their number in case the family needed anything. Rides, meals, whatever. They'd become a community in that dusty service road, bound together by compassion and the shared understanding that when someone needs help, you don't ask questions first, you just help. As the ambulance pulled away, Emma pressed her small face against the back window, waving frantically. The bikers waved back, standing in a line beside their motorcycles, watching until the vehicle disappeared down the highway. Nobody spoke for a long moment. They didn't need to. They all felt it. That rare, beautiful feeling of being exactly where you're supposed to be, exactly when you're needed most. Sarah was the first to break the silence. "Well," she said, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand, "I guess lunch can wait." Bear laughed, a sound that held both relief and wonder. "Yeah, I guess it can." He looked at his companions, these men and women who'd dropped everything to help a stranger in need. "You know what the best part is? That little girl was scared to death of us at first. You could see it in her eyes. But she pushed through that fear because she loved her mom more than she was afraid. And we got to show her that sometimes the people who look scary on the outside have the biggest hearts on the inside." The ride back to the diner was quieter than usual. Each person lost in their own thoughts. But there was a warmth among them now, a shared pride in what they'd accomplished. They'd saved a life today. They'd answered a desperate cry for help. They'd been the heroes a little girl needed, even if they didn't look like the heroes she'd imagined. 3 weeks later, Bear received a letter in the mail. Inside was a drawing, crayon, on construction paper showing a little girl holding hands with a group of people, standing next to motorcycles. At the top, in careful, childish handwriting, it read, "Thank you for saving my mom. You are my real-life superheroes. Love, Emma." Below the drawing was a note from Jennifer, explaining that she'd made a full recovery, that their car had been fixed by a local mechanic who'd heard about what happened and offered to help, and that Emma talked about the bikers every single day. "You changed how my daughter sees the world," Jennifer wrote. "You taught her that heroes come in all forms, and that kindness exists in unexpected places. Thank you for being the answer to a terrified child's prayer." Bear pinned the drawing to his garage wall, right next to his motorcycle. And every time he looked at it, he remembered that day, the day a little girl ran to them crying, and they proved that humanity's greatest power isn't strength or speed or toughness. It's the simple choice to care when someone needs you most.